Michael Heron's voice just enough off-key to make him glad no one else was around. He let the tune drift lazily between verses, tapping his fingers in rhythm on the worn surface of the console. Out here, silence was the usual state of things, the kind of deep quiet that came from months without a single real emergency or a message worth rushing for. He had almost stopped expecting the unexpected. The slow pace suited him. Between monitoring the channels, he kept a small notepad beside the console, filled with half-finished stories he had been writing for years. It was a hobby that started back in training, a way to pass the long shifts. Most of his tales were about human and alien clashes, the kind of dramatic encounters he had never experienced himself. Right now he was stuck on a scene. His main character, a stubborn major, had just captured an alien battleship. Michael couldn't decide if he should keep the major on board, leading a desperate counterattack from inside enemy lines, or strand him somewhere remote, forcing a raw survival fight on some forgotten moon. Outside the viewport, the stars scattered like cold sparks, unmoving and eternal, a backdrop that made human struggles feel small. He reached for his coffee without looking, missing the handle and catching the cup just before it tipped. He was sliding the dial to sweep through the deep-range frequencies when something faint curled through the noise. He froze mid-verse, his eyes narrowing at the subtle rise in the signal. It wasn't sharp like a distress call, and it wasn't random like interference from drifting debris. It had a rhythm, for pulses. Pause. 2 pulses. A longer pause. Then it started again, exactly the same. He adjusted the filters, isolating the sound from the clutter. The room seemed to grow colder as the pattern repeated, too deliberate to be natural. He glanced at the notepad, at the line about the alien battleship, and felt a shiver creep into the space between fiction and reality. This wasn't in his story. This was on his channel. He reached for the comm link on the wall, pressing the call for Commander Lorraine, when she stepped in moments later, tying her hair back with one hand. He was already replaying the signal for her. The moment she heard it, she stopped moving, the ties slipping from her fingers as if she had forgotten what she was doing. "That's not possible," she muttered, almost under her breath. Michael didn't ask what she meant. Something in her tone told him he wouldn't like the answer. She ordered him to contact her at command immediately, her voice sharper now. He turned back to the console, fingers moving quickly across the controls. The main relay failed. The backup failed. Even the secondary links collapsed the moment he engaged them, the system spitting back jagged bursts of static. Before he could try again, Laura's gaze shifted past him toward the viewport. Michael followed her eyes, and his chest tightened. A shadow was moving against the starfield, vast and silent. Then another, and another. They passed with impossible precision, each one sliding into place like pieces of an ancient machine. The more that came, the more the stars vanished behind their hulking forms, until Michael was left staring at a sky that no longer looked like space at all, but like the beginning of a storm he could not name. Michael had seen large ships before, but nothing like this. The nearest one drifted past without a single beacon or active engine flare, its dark hull catching only slivers of reflected starlight. The design was unmistakably Terran, but not like anything in current service. Its structure was heavier, more angular, layered with armor plating meant for wars that hadn't been fought in his lifetime. The lines of it hull spoke of an era when ships were built to take punishment instead of avoid it, and it carried that weight with kind of silent authority that made his chest tighten. Laura didn't say anything for several seconds. Her eyes stayed on the glass until the ship slid beyond the edge of the viewport, replaced by another, then another. The formation was perfect, the gaps between vessels identical, each one following the other as if tethered by invisible lines. "Get your jacket," she said finally. Her tone wasn't sharp, but it left no room for questions. Michael pushed away from the console and followed, the last fragment of the strange signal still replaying in his head. The station's secure operations wing was smaller than Michael had imagined, but it carried a different air. The lighting was softer, the temperature a little cooler, the quiet deeper in a way that seemed deliberate. Screens lined the walls, their shifting blue and green light reflecting off the faces of the officers inside. He had never been in here before. He had never had a reason to be. Now every screen seemed to pull him in, each one a window into something he didn't want to see too clearly. On one display, a line of external drones was pulling back from the formation. The drones' feeds trembled with low-frequency interference, their stabilizers overcompensating, as if the space around them wasn't entirely stable. On another, diagnostic streams poured down like rain, reporting no hull breaches, no local weapon activity, no clear reason for the unease that was already wrapping itself around the room. But on the central screen, the formation of ships stretched farther than he could count. Rows of them, each moving at the same slow, precise pace. No signal markers, no transponders. Just silent, dark metal sliding against a field of stars. "Silent Fleet," one of the senior techs said quietly, not looking up from his console. His voice carried more weight than volume, as if the words were something you didn't say out loud without consequence. Michael glanced at Laura, expecting her to dismiss the name like it was a joke, but she didn't. She only told the tech to lock down every system not essential for survival. No one argued. "Silent Fleet?" Michael asked after a moment, his voice low enough that he hoped it wouldn't draw too much attention. "It's classified," Laura said without looking at him. Her eyes were on the largest ship in the formation, its shadow cutting across the drone feed like a moving eclipse. "And you don't want to know how classified." He should have left it there, but the room felt heavier now. He could sense the split between the older officers and the younger ones. The older ones kept their movements clipped and precise, their faces locked in expressions that seemed designed not to reveal anything. The younger ones looked restless, glancing at each other as if they were trying to piece together a rumor from scattered fragments. Michael had seen this kind of tension before in smaller ways, a room full of people who all knew enough to be afraid, but not enough to feel in control. A burst in the comm panel broke the silence. The side wall lit up with a request for visual data from a central Terran relay station. Laura stepped forward to respond, her fingers moving quickly across the interface. For a moment, the connection seemed stable, but before she could send the first image, the screen erupted in white noise. She tried again. The same result. "They're jamming us," one of the analysts said. "They shouldn't be able to jam us," another replied. It didn't sound like a counterargument, more like someone trying to reassure themselves. Michael's gaze went to the drone feed again just as one of the smaller ships in the formation moved closer to the largest cruiser. There was no change in their pace, but something about the alignment felt intentional. Then the feed sharpened for a heartbeat, clear enough to catch a thin, faint blue flicker along the belly of the cruiser. It wasn't a weapon discharge. It moved too slowly, like a beam sweeping back and forth. "That's a scan," Michael said without thinking. The feed cut to black before anyone could respond. The room fell quiet again. Laura stepped back from the console, her eyes flicking to the star chart on the far wall. "Prep the shuttle," she said. "I'm taking this to Earth in person." "You can't leave without clearance," one of the techs reminded her. "Not from this sector. Not with those ships out there." "Then we leave without clearance," she said. Michael followed her out, his mind locked on that slow-moving blue beam. He had been scanned before, once during a customs check, once when a patrol frigate passed too close to a convoy. Both times, the scan felt routine, like an expected step in a checklist. This one didn't feel routine. It felt like the cruiser was looking for something specific, and whatever it found would decide what happened next. The shuttle's engines gave a low, steady vibration through the deck plates, the kind that was almost soothing in normal circumstances. Michael kept his hands clasped loosely in his lap, watching the dark curve of the station slide away on the small side display. He had been off station before, but never without full clearance, and never with someone like Laura Keene in the pilot's seat. She didn't look nervous, but there was a stiffness in her posture, like every muscle was being asked to stay ready for something she wasn't saying out loud. They cut a wide arc away from the main drift of the Silent Fleet, using the shadow of a nearby ice moon to mask their initial vector. The moon's surface gleamed under the faint spill of a distant sun, but beyond that pale light, the fleet's silhouettes loomed, massive, unlit, and in perfect formation. Michael had the uneasy sense that they were aware of the shuttle's departure, even if no radar sweep or alarm told them so. Laura kept her eyes on the navigation panel. making small course adjustments that barely registered to him but clearly mattered to her. "We'll skirt the outer debris line," she said. "Stay quiet, keep our profile low, and get to the relay point on the other side. From there, we'll try a direct beam to Earth Command." Michael nodded, but his attention was pulled back to fleet. He counted at least 24 ships in visible range, each one a monument to a design philosophy long abandoned. These weren't fast attack craft or elegant diplomatic vessels. They were built to endure, to carry their own ecosystems for years if needed, and to crush whatever they faced. He thought of the blue scanning beam again, the way it had moved with such deliberate slowness, as if cataloging every detail of the drone before cutting the feed entirely. The shuttle cleared the moon's shadow, and for a moment it felt like they were in the clear. Then the proximity alarm gave a muted chime. Laura didn't flinch, but her jaw shifted slightly. "What is it?" Michael asked. "Something just matched our vector," she said, keeping her voice even. "Not close enough to show on visual yet, but close enough for me to know they're interested." They didn't need to wait long to see it. A smaller vessel, smaller only compared to colossal cruisers, slid into view from the dark, its hull the same blackened alloy as the rest of the fleet. No running lights, no visible weapons extended. It just matched their pace exactly, as if tethered to them by invisible cable. "Do we run?" Michael asked. "No, we change nothing. Any sudden movement, and they'll know we've seen them." He swallowed, leaning back as the vessel drew closer. There was no bridge window, no sign of life, just a blank, armored surface that reflected nothing. The shuttle sensors gave no readout of crew, no trace of active weapon systems. Still, Michael could feel the weight of its presence, like being in a room where someone is watching from just behind your shoulder. It followed them past the debris line and then, without warning, broke off, gliding back toward the main formation. Laura didn't relax. If anything, her focus sharpened. "That was a test," she said. "A test of what?" "To see if we'd panic," she replied. "They want to know how we'd react under quiet pressure." They reached the relay point an hour later, a small automated platform anchored to the edge of an asteroid field. Laura brought the shuttle to a slow dock, the clamp securing with a metallic click. She moved quickly to the transmitter console, opening a narrowband beam aimed directly at Earth Command's secure channel. For a few seconds, the connection held, the faint buzz of encryption negotiation filling the cabin. Then the feed split into static, the beam collapsing under an external override. "They're ahead of us," Laura said under her breath. "They're inside the comm lattice already." Michael stared at the blank screen. "How?" "The lattice was secure," she finished for him. "And they've just proved it's not." Before either of them could speak again, the relay platform shuddered. Not violently, but enough to make the dock shuttle tremble against the clamps. Michael looked to the exterior feed in time to see a shadow pass across the asteroid field. One of the cruisers was moving. Slowly, deliberately, it altered its course toward their position, the rest of the fleet holding formation. Laura's hand went to the throttle. "We're leaving." They detached from the relay and pushed into open space, weaving between the larger asteroids. The cruiser didn't accelerate, but it didn't have to. It was blocking the only clear exit vector. Michael's voice was tight. "If they're blocking us, and what do we do?" "We don't get blocked in," Laura said, flipping the shuttle into a tight roll that sent them skimming dangerously close to a jagged rock face. "Hold on." They dove deeper into the asteroid field, the shuttle's hull groaning under the strain of quick course changes. Behind them, the cruiser kept its pace steady, cutting off any return route, while keeping just far enough back to avoid the dense rock clusters. It was shepherding them, Michael realized, not chasing, guiding. They broke through to the far side of the field, but before they could celebrate the open space ahead, the sensors lit up again. Another ship was waiting there, perfectly still, its black hull catching just enough light to show the faint outline of an old Terran crest burned into the plating. Michael's throat went dry. "That's impossible. That crest hasn't been used in." "I know," Laura said. "And if it's here, then we're about to find out why." The ship ahead didn't move. It didn't need to. Its presence alone was enough to freeze every thought in Michael's head. That crest, a simple ring enclosing a three-point star, belonged to a time when Earth had fought wars in places now barely mapped. It had been retired generations ago, left to gather dust in historical archives and old propaganda reels. Seeing it here, burned into a hull drifting in open space, was like finding a living dinosaur on your front lawn. Laura didn't steer toward it. She didn't steer away either. She kept the shuttle on a slow, steady glide, like she was approaching a wounded predator. The cruiser behind them maintained its position, effectively pinning them between the two ships. Michael kept glancing between the crest and the blank sensor readouts. "It's dead metal," he said. "No heat signature, no." The comm unit clicked. Not the high-pitched crackle of static they had been hearing all day. This was sharp and deliberate, a signal open from the outside. A voice came through, male, low, and calm, with a cadence that made Michael's skin crawl. "Terran vessel, identify yourself." Laura's hand hovered over the comm controls. "This is Shuttle 477 Keen out of Oriole Station, requesting direct relay to Earth Command." The voice didn't answer right away. The silence was almost worse than the words. When it finally spoke again, there was a faint edge of amusement in the tone. "Earth Command already knows you're here." Laura shot Michael a quick glance before replying. "Then they'll know we're returning." "You won't be returning to Oriole Station," the voice said. No threat, no emotion, just fact. The comm went dead. Michael leaned closer to the console. "What does that mean? Are they—" The ship, with the crest, began to move. It turned with impossible precision for something that size, aligning its bow with the shuttle. No visible weapons deployed, but Michael felt the hairs on his neck rise. This wasn't just an old war relic. It was alive in some way the sensors couldn't read. Laura eased the throttle forward, banking the shuttle to skirt the larger vessel's port side. For a moment it seemed like they might slip past, but as they reached the midpoint of the hull, a blue light pulsed along its length. The same scanning beam they had seen before, but this time it locked on them directly. The beam washed over the shuttle, the panels flickering in response. Michael's console readouts went blank one by one. Life support, navigation, external comms. "Power's being drained," he said. Laura was already moving to manual controls, her jaw tight. "They're taking us somewhere. Hold on." The beam intensified, and the shuttle began to drift, pulled by an unseen force. Michael looked at the viewport and realized they were no longer moving on their own at all. The larger vessel was reeling them in, slow and steady, toward a yawning hangar that opened along its side. Inside was nothing but shadow, no lights, no movement. Michael's chest tightened. "We can't go in there. We don't even know if—" "We'll get out," Laura finished. "Yeah, I know." The cruiser behind them adjusted position, sealing off any escape vector. The message was clear. They weren't being asked. As the shuttle crossed the threshold into the hangar, the blue beam shut off. Darkness swallowed them. For a few seconds there was nothing but the sound of their own breathing. Then, faintly, Michael heard the metallic clang of docking clamps locking into place. Laura didn't move. Neither did Michael. The console was still dead, and the only light in the cabin was a dull emergency glow above their heads. Then a new sound began to rise from the darkness outside. Slow, deliberate footsteps on metal, growing closer to the shuttle with each passing second. The footsteps stopped just beyond the forward viewport. Michael could see nothing through the dark, but he felt watched. It wasn't like being stared at from across a room. This felt closer, heavier, like whatever was out there was deciding something about them. A hiss broke the silence, and the shuttle's forward hatch began to cycle open. Laura reached for the side, holster under her jacket, but her hand stopped halfway. Weapons felt pointless here. Michael's got told them to people or things. Outside wouldn't be impressed by a sidearm. The hatch lowered with agonizing slowness, revealing the hangar beyond. It wasn't as empty as it had seemed from the outside. Rows of dark shapes lined the walls. Smaller craft, ground vehicles, supply crates, all arranged in a military neatness that spoke of long-term readiness. Dim strips of blue light ran along the ceiling, barely enough to outline the figure standing at the bottom of the ramp. The man wore an old Terran fleet uniform, but it was wrong in subtle ways. The cut was sharper, the fabric darker, the insignia on the chest a deeper burnished silver than regulation allowed. His face was calm, almost attached, but his eyes never left theirs. "Step outside," he said. The voice was the same one they had heard over the comm. Laura moved first, her boots hitting the hangar floor with a solid echo. Michael followed, feeling the temperature drop as soon as he crossed the threshold. The air smelled faintly metallic, like it had been recycled far too many times. "What is this ship?" Laura asked. Her tone was steady, but Michael could hear the edge underneath. "And how did you know we were coming?" The man studied her for a moment before answering. "This ship is older than you think, and we've been watching every Terran station in this sector for a long time." "That doesn't answer the question," she said. "It answers enough," he replied. Michael stepped forward, his frustration breaking through. "You're Terran. Your uniform, your crest. This is Earth's history. But Earth doesn't send ghost fleets to drag people into dead ships. So what are you?" The man's gaze shifted to him, and for a moment Michael thought he saw something like amusement flicker across his face, with a part of Earth that was never meant to be seen again. Before Michael could respond, movement stirred in the shadows behind the man. More figures emerged, each in the same altered uniform, each carrying themselves with the kind of quiet precision you only saw in veterans. But their faces told a different story. Some were human, clearly so, others weren't. The differences were small at first, a subtle change in the shape of the eyes, a faint pattern on the skin, but as more stepped into the light, the truth became harder to ignore. Laura noticed it too. "You're not all human," she said quietly. The man nodded once. "Not anymore." That answer landed heavier than Michael expected. It wasn't just the implication of genetic alteration or some hybrid program. It was the way the man said it, as if whatever they had become was a choice they had made, and one they didn't regret. The man took a step closer. "We've been silent for a reason. The galaxy thinks Earth is fractured, weakened, too busy with its own borders to project power. That illusion has kept us out of wars we weren't ready for. But if the galaxy learns we're still capable of what we once were, there will be no end to what comes for us." Laura's voice was steady when she asked, "Then why show yourselves now?" "Because someone on Oriole Station sent a signal. Not to Earth, to them." He pointed upward, not toward any specific point in the hangar, but toward the stars beyond. "And now they know where to look." Michael's stomach sank. The fragment of the strange transmission, the one he'd picked up earlier, came back to him in a rush. "You think that was me?" The man didn't answer, but the silence said enough. Laura stepped between them. "If you're as capable as you claim, you'll know whether it was intentional. And you'll also know we're not your enemy." The man's expression didn't change, but Michael thought he caught a flicker of something in his eyes. Not trust, exactly. More like calculation. "You'll both come with us," he said finally. "There's more you need to see before you understand what's at stake." Behind him, the hangar lights began to brighten in slow increments, revealing just how massive the space really was. Row after row of warships stretched into the distance, all bearing that same crest, all silent, all ready. Michael felt the scale of it in his bones. This wasn't just a fleet. This was a hidden arm of Earth's military might, waiting in the dark for the right moment to move. As the man turned and started walking, Laura glanced at Michael. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "We're not leaving here the same." Michael didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the endless lines of ships, each one a quiet promise of something the galaxy still feared. And for the first time, he wondered if maybe it should.